Hello, hello. What's up, everyone? Mel's in the building. What's up, Mel? Jose, what's going on, Jose? How's everyone doing today? How'd everyone enjoy their weekend? Let me go back here. What's up, Logan? I am just getting some stuff ready here. I think today we're going to go through an overview because last class we kind of got cut short with some of the impact things, and partially because I was running into an issue with moving the ball along an X value. And right after class, I was like, I know exactly what the issue is. And so, thank you, Mel. I got that email. I will put that with your project. Um, I'll go ahead and like download it later. We're gonna review those projects probably next week. Today we're gonna review the typography project, but after we kind of touch base more on this motion design one. But I had figured out the issue with the anticipation scene from the heavy ball. It was this one right here where we were trying to bounce this kind of into frame, and the reason that I had issues is because I had initially had the X and Y position correlated together when I needed to animate the Y position first, and then the X position doesn't have nearly as many keyframes. There's only two. And so I'm going to just show you guys how to do this. Um, Eric's in the building. What's up, Eric? Let me read this. My weekend was hectic. I had classwork and celebrated me and my twin's birthday. Yes. Way to go. Happy belated birthday, Logan. That's cool. And to your twin as well. That's pretty awesome. I knew a few sets of twins growing up, and I've always loved twins. Twins are so cool. I just think that there's this really cool thing about having someone around who like you can communicate with without even having to say words. My brother and I actually are only a year apart, like very very close in age, and we are very similar, and we're pretty much like twins because same exact sense of humor. We can understand each other without saying things, but we grew up very close, I mean, obviously being only a year apart. I'm not saying we didn't hate each other at a certain point. We got into plenty of trouble. I definitely can't talk about the trouble we got in class here, but yeah. As far as like the hectic goes, okay, you guys, I've been getting, yeah, twins are awesome. Cool. Well, I hope that the rest of the week is better, and I'm technically going to give you guys an extra, like a birthday surprise here. Because I've been getting a lot of students writing me and telling me they've been struggling to keep up in class. And so I am going to likely start extending due dates to 2 weeks so that you guys can have 2 weeks to complete a project and submit it. Now, because of that, the projects are going to be all submitted at really weird times. So when we do student like project reviews, if yours doesn't get reviewed in class because you haven't turned it in within the times we review it, I'll do my best to give you guys feedback as much as possible inside of Canvas. But I understand the struggle. These are big projects. They're not small projects. It's learning a lot of, we're learning essentially three different softwares in this class, right? We're doing a lot, and so I understand the stress of it all. And so the After Effects, I'm going to start with this motion design project, okay, you guys? So instead of on the 26th through the 24th, it's going to be due the 26th through. So essentially, you're just going to have like an extra week to get all your stuff done, right? So till March 11th, right? Do I think you should wait until the last minute to get this stuff done? No, absolutely not. In fact, I have several students who get their stuff turned in on time, and they work hard to get that done, which I very much greatly appreciate. And I would love that to continue so that I can continue to give feedback on those projects in an appropriate timeline. But I understand that this is a big, heavy class. And so instead of having you guys write me all the time, emailing me, I'm going to give you guys 2 weeks. With that being said, though, there's going to be, after that 2 weeks, like me accepting projects outside of that 2 week deadline might not happen. Okay. You might, if there's an exception that comes up, possibly, but I want you guys to start writing me as soon as you know you're going to have trouble making the deadline for the projects, right? Because if you guys write me the day after and are like, hey, I had trouble getting this in, usually we all know that we're struggling with deadlines before the deadline comes up. And so it might be worth writing me before that. And we can discuss something at that point. But yeah, so that's going to be your guys's kind of semester break that I'm going to give you. Is now the due date ranges are no longer going to be 1 week. I'm going to make them 2 weeks. But another note on top of that, because of this, right, projects are really going to start to overlap, especially if you guys don't stay on top of things and start keeping up. So you guys are going to be responsible for keeping the pace of your projects going and staying on task and on course with the projects, because this is a big part of, and I'm not saying this to scold anyone, because this is a big learning curve too, is deadlines are really important in this field, in any kind of design field, or any kind of any field where you have deadlines or due dates, right? If you have a project due and you're in the work environment, not in a class environment, and you don't get your project done, you get fired. And I mean, maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, but you're going to get reprimanded. And eventually, if it becomes a habit, it's going to become a thing. I'm not saying that people don't have exceptions that occur. We all experience life, right? That's fine. But this is a part of learning this class, as well as is really honing into deadlines and being able to get things done on time. I understand that there is a lot of stuff happening outside of this class with your other classes and all that kind of stuff. I understand some people have very heavy schedules, which is the other reason that I'm going to extend this, right? So keeping that in mind, now the due date ranges are going to be 2 weeks long, but outside of that, I might not accept your project. So if you don't get your project done, you might not have the opportunity to turn it in to me. I want you guys to be extra communicative if you are going to miss the deadline, like not the day of or the day after, write me the day before or the day before. I want like a couple days of you to notify me, hey, I'm not going to make it. Something's come up, this and this and that. If you're struggling still with things within the class and with the lessons and understanding the software, I highly, highly encourage you guys to really utilize tutoring. I can't tell you enough how Belle is such a wonderful asset that we have in this program. And she might explain things to you guys in a different way that you're not getting from me, right? We all have different teaching styles as instructors in life, right? And some people learn a different way than what is being taught to them. So Belle's way of teaching might be a little bit more conducive to your learning style. It might just help if you need a little extra assistance. if you guys don't want to attend the live streams, if you're finding that you're watching the live streams, but then having to go back and rewatch a bunch of videos and stuff like that, you don't have to stick to the live streams, right? You guys can switch between modalities. We've talked about this at the beginning of the semester. You can watch live streams. You don't have to show up. The live streams are where you get to ask your questions, though, in person, right? I can look over here and I can check your guys' questions, which I see Pierre and Logan. I'll read those in a second once I'm done talking. But like, you get the opportunity to ask those questions live here with me and get live feedback. And that is the benefit of watching these lives or attending the lives. But if you're struggling with that and you don't want to sit here and watch a 2.5 hour class, then just do the online coursework and watch the little videos that I link. I make sure that all of the stuff that you need to know in each module is linked in the thing. If it is not, let me know and I will show you where you can find that stuff, right? I'm very, very understanding of things, and as long as I'm getting communication and stuff, then we can work on whatever the issue is that's coming up. But I just want you guys to be successful in this class. And if you feel like you're still struggling after all of this, then maybe the course isn't right for you at this time, which is totally fine. You guys are more than welcome to withdraw from a class and then take it later on down the road, keeping in mind that withdrawing from a class can affect your financial aid. I'm not quite sure how. It has to do with when you withdraw from a class, like you have to pay for the entire course if you withdraw. That's what I mean by like affecting your financial aid, is that like withdrawing from the course at a certain point might cause you to still have to pay for the course, and then you have to pay for it again when you take it again, so courses aren't cheap. I mean, it's cheaper than going to a university and taking a course at a university, a 4-year college. But this, I'm not going to be upset if you feel like, hey, this is beyond my scope of work at the moment. I need to dedicate more time, and right now is not the appropriate time for me to do that. I'm okay with that. Okay, guys, I'm not going to judge you if you drop the class now and take it a year or two down the line. It's not a big problem. So, with that being said, we're going to jump back into the motion design project here. I'm going to show you guys where the issue was last week, and we're going to cover a couple more things. And then we're going to start going over your typography projects, which I'm probably going to go over more projects on Thursday's class is going to be like reviews and stuff as well, to give you guys a second to catch up. Also, keep in mind that spring break is coming up as well. So you guys will have some more time to catch up. I know it's not ideal, especially if you guys are going out for spring break. Then it's, time management is a thing that you might have to adjust and work on outside of that. Pierre said, thank you. I've been trying to keep up and have been playing catch up, and it's been a struggle, so it's much appreciated. Not a problem, Pierre. I appreciate you. I also appreciate the extended due dates. I'll make sure to balance my time in future assignments. Thank you. Yeah, that's okay, you guys. Like, I'm not upset, right? I'm not mad that this is just serious me telling you guys this is what we're doing moving forward. I have to instruct you guys. Not everyone has problems keeping up. Not everyone has problems with the software. But like I said, we're all at different levels. And so because of that, we have to teach. Like, I'm not only teaching to the people who are at those higher levels, but I also have to consider the people who are struggling behind to keep them up with the group, right? And so that is the reason we're going to extend these due dates for you guys. So now it's going to be 2 weeks instead of 1 week. I will make sure to post an announcement. Let me see here. Post announcement in case you guys do not watch the live streams. I think that this will be helpful for you guys. So it'll start with the motion design. This project that we're working on right now will now be moved from being due yesterday to next Monday. It's going to be due you can have it turned in from yesterday all the way to the 11th of March. Also, one thing to note, right, is that once we start getting to the end of the semester, you're definitely going to want to have these projects in and reviewed and stuff, because I'm not going to be able to review everyone's projects and give you appropriate feedback if you're turning a bunch of stuff in right before the semester's over and you haven't done any revisions on it, right? So when I give you the feedback in class, you just take that feedback, you make the changes, and then later, maybe next week, we'll do this, or right before spring break, which I think will be next week. But we'll do a revision round where you take all of that feedback that I give you, you make those changes, and then you just submit that. So if you guys want to make those changes early on and get that stuff done, you can. And then that way, when we have the revision round, all that stuff's ready to go, all rendered out. All you got to do is put it all together in one video and then export it and send it on out to me. So, that's a way to save your time, as well as implementing feedback as soon as you get it. Okay, let's dive into this. So, last time we created the light ball. Well, first we did the opening, right? Our title sequence or title scene. And then we did the light impact. I did change the color of the ball. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it was purple before I changed it to green. And then we were working on the heavy impact, which we were having a little bit of an issue with. And so I showed you guys instead how to do the heavy ball versus the light ball. We are going to probably still add to this a little bit, possibly after, depending on time. But really right now I wanted to show you guys a little bit more about the anticipation scene, and then maybe do the squash and stretch one, and then moving to the reviews. So that way you guys can stick around if you want to watch the reviews, or you guys can head out. It's up to you. All right, today's going to be a lot of talking, so I had to get loaded up with my water. So, before we had created a ball. First of all, heavy impact text. Let me lock this text up so I don't move it around. I'm going to zoom in here. Possibly go back like this. There we go. And I'm actually going to delete this ball because I already have a heavy ball bounce in my heavy and light pre-comp right here. So I'm going to copy that, right? Because we essentially have done the work. We just need to make an update on this, and the update is going to be adding the X position. So when I play this, right, the ball looks heavy, it's hitting, it's bouncing, and then it stops all of a sudden. If I click onto the graph editor and then we go look at this, you have keyframes that look like a bounce, right? Let me shut off my camera here so you guys can see. We've got the bouncing keyframes here. I might add just an extra bounce into here as well, just to give it a little bit more of a settling, maybe a couple right up here, move up just a hair, and then right here, move down to that 8. What was that value? 878. Still had it written down. Oh yeah, that's what's up. And now I'm going to go back into my graph editor, and we're going to kind of zoom in. Let's zoom in on this part right here. Obviously we have to adjust this to make it a bounce, right? So that's going to perk up like that. And then same with this one. Right here is going to perk up like this. And then we're going to take this one and just kind of holding down shift, just bring that out a little bit. In fact, this one right here, now that I can see it, it looks a little funny. Let's move this one over. And this is going a little too high, so I just need to adjust this part of the bounce where it hits the ground. And the reason that I'm saying that's going too high, because the curve was right at where this other keyframe was, so it's going to affect the way it looks, right? So we want to just make sure. Let's move this keyframe so that, oh, I think that is on our, I think everything we adjusted so everything was on an actual frame and not in between frames, which we don't want, right? And so let me zoom back out of here and let's play this. Nice. Okay. Not bad. Adding that extra bounce in there just gave it a little bit of an ending. Let me just grab these two keyframes and adjust the timing. There we go. I think that looks good. Play this. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. And so now we wanted to add that X value. So this ball starts off screen, right, and bounces onto screen. Well, let's, the problem was last time is that, like I said, I was trying to do the X position and the Y position at the same time, which wasn't beneficial. I needed to do them separately. And so having this Y position, having the bounce happen first is that's the first step, right? Is blocking this bounce out, adjusting your curves so that it's actually bouncing off of your ground per se. And in fact, we can draw a ground here so it looks like it's actually bouncing off of something. Let me just create a new shape layer, drop this shape layer down, maybe right there. Let's change the control, double click here just to bring that up. Let's maybe change the color of this. If I look at my main render, let's change this maybe to a very soft green. Ooh. Sorry guys, I'm drinking a sparkling water and so it's making me I'm having to burp. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Okay. That's good. Like kind of this yellowish reddish color. And in fact, we can again add that layer style into this. So to give it like that same kind of noise happening on there. So if I go to right click, go to layer styles, and then do a inner shadow. I believe that was the one we used last time. And the inner shadow is, where are you? At the top. We need to flip that, right? So let's increase the distance a little bit and change this to dissolve so that it's kind of like that. And maybe we might have to, if I hit V on here, we might have to extend the size of this thing, depending. Let's see how big we can get the size. There we go, that looks good. And then we just want to flip it. So let's do 90 and see where that puts it. Okay, so let me put 0 here. 180? 45. Come on, buddy. Why you do this to me? Probably because that's okay. So what we can do is instead we'll color this one our highlight color, right? So then we'll change the fill color to maybe a little bit darker. Drop down the hue a little bit. Cool. And then let's extend the sides on here by just, all you got to do is under your properties panel, you can just click off of this and then extend those sides out. So it just kind of gets all that stuff off the edge there. And I'm going to name this floor. Floor. There we go. And I'm going to drop this to the bottom here, and I'm going to lock it so that I can't mess around with it. Right, so we have like at least something that this is bouncing off of when I play it. I'm going to save my work since I made a decent change here. And let's get this ball to now move from left to right. The first thing that I want to do is I want to adjust this to where I want the ball to end up. So I want the ball to maybe end up kind of more towards the center. I'm going to just type in 960 here because what's going to happen is the projectile is going to cock back and hit the ball. 960. And this ball isn't going to move it's going to move, let me turn on my notation tool. Zoom it so I can do this. So the projectile is going to move this way, and then it's going to hit the ball, and the ball is obviously going to move back this way. but not very far, right? Because this ball is going to be heavy now instead of light like it was in the first uh, anticipation pre-comp that we did. So moving over here, I moved it into the X position where I want it to end up. We're animating backwards again. And I'm going to put a keyframe there in the X position. And then I'm going to move all the way to the beginning of the timeline with my playhead. And I'm just going to move, just change my X position back here so you can actually see the bounce occurring, right? So now when I play it, this bounce is happening from off screen and then it's moving over to where it needs to go. Now looks like there's needs to be some adjusting on the motion path essentially here right now. Let's go ahead and we can do that by selecting our two X keyframes and hitting F9 because we're going to ease them. It's going to change the way that looks. We're going to go into our graph here and we're actually going to kind of like almost make this look linear, but not. So I'm going to go like this and notice that when I'm doing this, it's changing the way my path looks, right? And so then if I kind of just bring this down here and make like a nice steady sloping shape, that just means that it's going to move from left to right in almost more of a linear way. In fact, I would maybe have it slowed down a little bit at this end, and maybe even just kind of shorten the bounces right around here. And then we're going to just have to adjust our Y keyframes a little bit, like the Y. If I select all of these, go back into my graph editor, we might just have to adjust some of these keyframes. So this one, I'm probably going to move over here, right, to center it because it was the peak of the bounce was kind of over on this side of the bounce, or the peak where the ball is in the air was closer to where it was going to bounce here, and that's not appropriate to what a bounce should be. So I'm just going to move. It's just like adjusting the timing, right? I'm just going to move these over. I might have to zoom in here a little bit more. And maybe this keyframe has to move over one extra one. So maybe I have to just space my timing a little bit differently. I'm going to change the way this curve looks a little bit. Maybe change the way this curve looks a little bit. Get it more to like a bounce shape. Let's see this one here. Maybe I want to bring this bounce up a little bit more. So remember, opposite. Look at this is a great way for you guys to visualize what's happening in your graph versus what is happening actually in the like composition in your stage. Because if I select this keyframe and I grab it and I start moving it, you can see how the path of the animation changes, right? So you can see that I obviously want this bounce to be up a little bit higher, and then I need to just kind of smooth that out a little bit with my curves. So if anything, even if you guys don't do this technique, like you guys stick to what we saw in the module, like what's linked in the module. This is a great learning opportunity for you guys to have to kind of see what the motion paths do based on what your graphs look like inside of your graph editor. And so now if I play it, it's just got this nice smooth motion. I might just shorten up if I go back into my dope sheet view here, move to the beginning, shorten up my timeline. I noticed that there's a little bit too much space right here. And so I want to move this over. I do want to make sure that my X value is at the very end lining up here. Okay. Wait, if we need to get done all our changes based on your feedback before spring break when we appropriately will have those feedbacks. I mean, like, how much time will we have? You'll have the 2 weeks to get that stuff done. So I'm just saying that might be a good assignment for you guys to have before. And I'll make sure that I only put the revision, so how revision rounds work is I'll give you a list of which projects to make the changes on. And you will just make sure it's on those ones. I never give you revisions to complete if I haven't given you the feedback on it. So it might not be next week, it might be the week after, but we'll just see how much time we have to get that. Ooh, I don't want to do that. To get that done. Let me actually move this one. I think I want to move this one over, holding shift. There we go. maybe adjust this just a little bit. Not bad. Okay, I might shorten the timing a little bit between this one here and then these ones so that the bounce is going to be much shorter. Did that answer your question? Oh, got it. Thanks. Yeah, not a problem. All right. I'm just kind of visually seeing that the spacing in between my keyframes is slowly going down, not getting wider, right? Because this one here, this one, there's a couple spots in my keyframes like this right here, which is wider than this, and I don't want that to occur. So I'm just going to maybe shuffle this one over a little bit. Right there. Same with this one right here. There we go. That looks good. Cool. There's a little bit of a skid happening. Where's that skid? This part right here. So I'm just going to take this and move this all in. Just selecting this and dragging. Selecting these and dragging. Cool. There we go. And now, so now we have that X position in there as well. It's changing. And now the ball's going to get hit by the projectile and move back this way. So what I want to do is I actually want to make a second instance of my heavy ball here that doesn't have any position properties on that. So, so how do I do that? I can either go into my project over here on my comps and drag the thing in, or what I can do is use a shortcut, which is, oops, wrong. I did not want to do that. Did not want to create a text layer. The shortcut is actually Control plus D. And what that will do is it splits your layer, right? So wherever my playhead is, if I hit Control D, it's going to cut that layer there, and it's going to move the second half right here up onto its own separate layer. And so if I just escape out of this and I move to right after the ball is settled, if I hit U on my keyboard, anytime after your keyframes are done, and I hit Control D, oh, I'm sorry, not Control D, it is Shift Control D. There we go. So let me update that for you guys. Go in here, Shift, plus Control plus D equals split layer. In case you guys want to write this down, this is a good one to remember. A really good shortcut to have for you guys. And the cool thing about this, right? So I can shut this off here. If I so it's like essentially the same thing, right? Just split in half. Well, if I go to this top layer here and I hit U on my keyboard, I still have all of those position animation properties on this layer, which I can just shut off by clicking off of my little stopwatches there, which basically shuts that off, right? And so now we have this ball that's going to move into my composition. And then all of a sudden, if I were to shut this one off, this layer here, and move over here, we don't have it, right? Because it's not visible. But if I play, all of a sudden the ball's just going to show up right here. This is a great thing that we call, you know, Casey Farina calls it the switcheroo, right? Where it's basically just a quick cut from one frame to the other of the same object in the same position, which allows you to have maybe more changes to this object's position in a more complex way. Like you can have more complex changes done to the second layer, even though it looks like it's one single object, right? And so you'll see what I mean here once we move forward with this. So this ball now is heavy. It's just sitting down here waiting to be hit by the projectile. And so we are going to, of course, take our projectile. We're going to do the Y position. And same spot where we have this layer split, I am going to just keyframe the Y position on this projectile, hit U so I can see it, Let me actually change the color of this layer here so that we can kind of just tell the difference between the top one and the bottom one, right? So that one will be dark purple. This one below will be the pink. And then let's select this projectile again, hit U here so we can see what's going on. This ball again, right, it's going to anticipate the movement. So we're going to move, maybe let's go 1, 2, 3, 4 frames ahead. And we're going to move this ball. Oh, not down. Sorry, keyframe the wrong position. We're doing X position. Duh, dingy. There we go. X position there. Hit you again. I'm going to move this to where that split is happening. And then I'm going to keyframe the position again here. And then I'm just going to move this back. Like it's going to anticipate that motion. And then all of a sudden we're going to move, let's do 12 frames ahead. So I got this, you can jump ahead 10 frames if you hit, let's see, Control plus, where's the plus? Like either your left or right arrows on your, I'm sorry, wrong ones. So your left arrow, and that will allows jump. Let's see here. Can I move this? There we go. Jump 10 frames. If you just hit, I'm sorry, I think that's shift control. My hands move so fast when I do this. Let's see. Control right or left arrow allows you to go 1. If you hit shift control, it allows you to go 10. So let me just rewrite that again for you guys. So type shift, or we'll do control plus arrow equals move 1 frame, either back or forwards. And then shift plus control plus arrow equals move 10 frames. Okay? I'll leave that up there for you guys for a second to write that down. These are just quick shortcuts that you'll get used to using, so you don't really have to lift your hand off of the keyboard, right? It just makes it a lot easier. So with that being said, I'm going to move ahead 10 frames, shift control right arrow, and then I'm going to move this all the way over here to make contact with this ball right there. Boom, right there. And let's now the ball gets hit by the projectile, so let's keyframe the position of the heavy ball now. So we're going to hit P on our keyboard. We're going to keyframe the X position. I'm just going to hit U so I can see this. And all of a sudden, this is going to take, because it's a heavy ball, it's not going to go far, A, and B, it's going to take a long time to get there, right? So I'm going to probably move ahead, shift control 10, 20, 1, 2, maybe 22 frames ahead, maybe even a whole second, 24 frames ahead. And I'm going to move this way, but not very far, right? Just maybe about to there. And so now if we just watch this kind of blocked out, boom, and it's only going to go to there, right? Now, this projectile, once it hits this heavy ball, it's going to continue moving, right? It's going to move. It's anticipating the motion. It's going to boom, hit that ball. But then it's also going to roll back a little bit. And so we want to add that kind of roll back happening there. So I'm just going to move my playhead over and then just move this ball maybe back almost like halfway in between. And so now that we're just watching the blocked out version, there we go. So now let's go ahead, now that we have everything blocked out, let's let us ease this motion. I'm going to select those keyframes, hit F9 on my keyboard, jump into my graph editor, and then we're just going to exaggerate this motion, right? Because the ball is always going to move. It's going to move, actually, it's going to kind of move a little bit quicker out of the first initial hit once it gets hit. But then it's going to really slowly kind of move into its final peak or its final resting position. So if I play this now, nice. It gets this nice, long, slow, kind of dragged out stop that happens here. But it gets a nice, if I hold down shift, if I grab that keyframe and just hold down shift and move it along my graph, I can update that placement there or the timing of it. But this way it's kind of speeding up a little bit right here, but right from about 3 seconds, 12 frames to a whole second, it's really just slowing down really smoothly in this section here, this 1 second time frame, to where the ball's like basically coming to a nice slow roll, right? Now if we update the projectile, let's go ahead and select all these keyframes, and we can ease them by hitting F9, or you can press easy ease down here at the bottom. And now we have this, let's make sure we're in the value graph. We are. So the ball is basically going to, let's see what happens here. It's cocking back. Maybe it doesn't go so far back, so I'm going to just kind of drop this down a little bit, holding shift. And that's just going to bring that keyframe value back into here a little bit. So it's not like such a far like cocking back of the ball or like pulling back of the ball. And then I'm going to take this, because this is where the ball is going to stop and move forward. Let's just kind of take this one so it's a nice smooth motion into that stop right here. It's going to kind of slow down into this section where it stopped. And then it's going to move rather quickly. In fact, let's keep this kind of a nice smooth arc shape so it doesn't have like some kind of jerking motion happen there. But it's going to move really fast towards this next ball. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that this curve is like kind of brought back in a little bit more. In fact, and then this one, we might even want to pull out a little bit further. Even here, pull this out a little bit further so we have a really steep section where this ball's picking up speed. Boom, right there, okay? And now the ball's going to hit the ball, or the projectile is going to hit the ball right here at this keyframe down at the bottom. And so this now is going to bounce off of the heavy ball, right? So in order to make that bounce, we need to adjust that to be an actual bounce inside of our graph. So now all of a sudden it's going to go boom, bounce, and then come to a nice slow roll again. So this is going to be nice and pulled out here because it's going to be a steady slow back into like it stopped from after it hit this heavy ball. So now when we play it, boom, it's going to hit that there. I might even want to maybe make this not such a heavy bounce right off of it, but maybe just kind of boom. There we go. Let's go ahead and play this. This slows down too much into here, so what we're going to do is this. Like this. We're going to create that bounce that's happening there. I'm actually going to move this after the ball cocks back. It's going to go forward really fast. It's going to hit this ball and then bounce back again. Let's play this. There we go. That looks a little bit better there because now we have this actual bounce off of the ball, the projectile bouncing off of the ball. That's happening a little bit more right here. It's a little bit faster. In fact, let's go ahead and let me just kind of speed this one up a little bit, right? Because now that it's not slowing into that position a little bit more, it's now just kind of when it's cocking back, it's going to quickly cock back and then boom. So I might even just kind of pull this one down a little bit so that it's going to ease out of the starting position. When it's cocking back, it's going to hit its far back peak, zoom into that. Let's play again. There we go. I think that looks better. In fact, now because the heavy ball is rolling and we have this texture on the balls now, we can actually add a rotation into this if we wanted to. So let me see the heavy ball if I want to add the rotation here. Right, I'm gonna go into my dope sheet view, and the rotation's gonna start right when that projectile hits the heavy ball and the ball moves forward. So I'm gonna just move that rotational keyframe up to here, and I'm gonna hit U on my layer so that I can see all the keyframes that are here. And the rotation's gonna happen just a little bit. But it's going to happen actually more towards this way. This might be something that would be better with a null. The -5 should be. Boom. In fact, I might even move this first rotational keyframe up here, so it doesn't start rotating until kind of towards the end when it gets to this resting spot. And the ball's usually going to rest. The rotation of a ball is going to stop kind of after the position. So if I play this, I might move this back here, but the rotation will still continue even after the ball is stopped at its final resting point. In fact, I might want to, you don't want to rotate this too much. In fact, let's use a rotation using a null, because that allows us the opportunity. I was just going back there. I should have just deleted this. But that gives us the opportunity to kind of rotate the ball from the center, because right now our ball is rotating from the base because that is where the anchor point is. But we want the rotation to be occurring from like the actual center of the ball. And so what I'm going to do is create a null object and attach my layer, my heavy ball layer, to that null object. So it's going to be like a secondary control, right? This is a really good way to kind of get around not being able to have two anchor points on an object. It's kind of like a hack way to do it, and it works perfectly fine. So you right click in your open area and you go to new and you create a null object there, or you can just go under layer, new, and create a null object this way. And what's going to happen is this null again is like a blank, it's a blank layer. So there's nothing attached to it right now. We have to tell it what it needs to be attached to. And I want it to be attached to the ball here. But before I do that, I want to make sure that this null is in the place that I want it to be. So I want it to be in the center of the actual ball. And I'm going to rename this layer rotation control. And I am going to connect this layer to the null. And how I do that is, again, we grab this little pick whip, or you can grab the drop down menu here and just drag this up to this rotation control layer, which I'll change the color to so we can see it a little bit better. I'll change it to green. And that way, and then I'll shorten this layer hitting Alt open bracket so that it's just kind of lined up to here. And now I'm going to select my heavy ball layer, hit U on my keyboard so I can see the properties, and I'm going to animate the rotation of this null. So I'm going to go in here, set the rotation, and then a little bit after the ball comes to a settled stop, I'm going to rotate this a little bit more. And because the null, actually, we have to parent this the other way around. So we have to link the rotation control to the heavy ball. I just did it opposite. So I'm going to hit none, and then select the control, grab that drop down menu and put it to the second heavy ball there. So now when the ball moves, it's controlling that, it's controlling the rotational layer. It's taking that one with it, right? So now when I keyframe the rotation, it will move along with the ball and it'll rotate the ball. Come on, are you not going to do that? Let's figure out. So that didn't work. this usually... We will connect the heavy pre-comp to the rotation control again. The other way you would have to do this is having the anchor point in the center of this ball here, which we could also do. But if we do that, then we have to change all of these keyframes. So what's up in Spirit Galaxy? Let's see here. Let's figure this one out. I might just have to add the same position properties. Well, I can teach you guys something here a little bit maybe more advanced. I'm going to select the position of this control layer, and I'm going to separate the dimensions out here. And I want this, the X position of the rotation layer to correlate to the, let me not do that. Cancel. Let's do this. I want this to, the X position of this layer to correlate to this X position of the heavy ball. And so with parenting or connecting layers, what you notice is that all of these, like there's an overarching parenting option or linking option on each layer. But then there's also these in the properties as well, in your transform properties. That means that you can link a specific property to maybe another object's property here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the X position of the rotation control, and I'm going to grab this little pick whip and I'm going to drag it to the actual X position of the heavy ball here. And let's see, it kind of worked. Let me update the... Let's just do this the easier way for you guys, because then we're going to have to update the position here, and it doesn't make sense because you're going to have to re-update your keyframes here anyway. So let's just kind of delete this. This is all a part of like the learning of animation, right? Is like you have to experiment with things as well. We wanted this to be at 960, so I'm just going to come here and shut off the keyframes. I'm going to type in 960 because that's where I want it to be, but I'm going to change the anchor point to the center of the ball here. And so I'm just going to double click the anchor point tool, and that sets that to the center. And so now when I keyframe this, right, it's going to start here. We're going to do the X position there. We're going to move it to the 412, 4 seconds, 12 frames. We're just going to move this over this way a little bit. We are going to, let's ease this motion, right? Because we want it to move slowly into the position. Settle slowly into that final resting, right? Boom, nice and slow there. And now if we add the rotation, it's going to happen at the center of the ball. It should. So let's go back to our dope sheet view. We're going to hold down Shift and hit R to bring up the rotation property as well. We're going to keyframe that, and then we're going to move it a little bit ahead, and we're just going to rotate the ball just slightly forward a little bit, just like that, maybe 30, maybe not even negative 30, maybe only 20 degrees, because it's a heavy ball, so it's not going to rotate a lot. And then we're just going to hit F9 on this, and we're on the rotation property to ease this rotation as well. Again, slowly into that final resting place there. So now about boom, nice and slow into that. In fact, I might even just make this a little faster here. So almost like it's close to a linear movement, but here we go. Nice. I'm going to save that. Maybe even adjust the... See, if you put the end rotation, the final rotation before the ball comes to a stop, it looks like it's sliding more. But if we move this keyframe after the ball sets in its final resting position, just right there, even just one frame off, looks a little bit better. And let's see what it looks like lined up completely. Not bad. I might just increase the rotation to that -30, just so we get a little bit more in there. There we go. Cool. I'm going to drag this off to the edge there to offset that a little bit more. There we go. And save that. So now we have our heavy impact. And so now we can drag this one. We've got this happening. It's going to move away. Let's fade this one on screen. So let's see here. If we go into our effects and presets, we can type in fade. So enter. We don't want to animate the text fade. Transitions. Let's do just a quick dissolve. Flash to white, fade, overexposed. I'm going to create my own fade just by animating the opacity here. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard on this anticipation, the light anticipation. I'm going to change the color of my layer so that I can see it. Keyframe it at 100. Zoom in here. Move this to about here. Add another keyframe at the 100. And then move back here and change this value of the first keyframe to 0. There we go. And that's going to fade in. It's going to hit there. Then we can do what's called like a match cut, right? Because this ball went flying off this side. Once this ball ends its motion, we can add in the heavy impact. So I'm just going to drag that pre-count down here. I'm going to hold down shift and drag this here so it's going to snap right there. And the first thing that you're going to notice is 2 projectiles, because obviously the other composition is still visible right here. And so we want to cut that. So I'm just going to move to where these compositions add up, and I'm going to hit select it on this layer, that light impact composition. I'm going to hit Alt close bracket, and then I just notice I have to drag that in one in order to change that. So it's going to swap over. Inconsistencies here, as this one doesn't have a floor, so we got to add that floor from our heavy impact comp. So let's copy this layer, Control C, move into the light impact, bring our playhead all the way to the beginning and hit Control V, and then just drag this down to the bottom and lock it so that we can't really change where the floor is, can't accidentally move it. And so now when we go to our main one here, it's going to fade in. It's going to hit that switch. That ball's going to come bouncing in. That one's going to hit it. It's going to roll and it's going to stop right there. And then we can add in, now we can, let's see, right about there, let's fade this off. So I'm going to hit T on the keyboard. Let's change the color of the comp just so we can see. And we're going to start at 100. Let's move 10 frames ahead and change it to 0. And then let's Alt close bracket to kind of trim that composition right there. And then we're going to add the mass composition. So I'm gonna shorten my timeline there so I can just see everything, and making sure that I line this layer up with these keyframes. So while this one's fading off, it's going to fade this one on, right? So in fact, let me also reflect those keyframes right here. on this layer. So I'm going to change this color to green. And let's do the opacity opposite on this layer here. So it looks like a little bit of a smoother transition. So I started at 0. I'm going to move my playhead over to this opacity keyframe on the above layer. And then on this heavy and light ball, I'm going to add another keyframe. So while one is fading on, the other's fading off, right? There we go. So this impact or the anticipation layer is fading off. This one's fading on. It's a little bit too long, so I'd shorten this up. So probably only make it, maybe drag this over here. Maybe only a few frames versus, there we go. And that happens nice and quick, so that we're not fully into the playing of the next, there we go, into the next composition. Let's see, I think this is maybe only 4 frames, which was a quick enough fade to happen. The other thing I want to do is I want to add that floor into here, right? So that we have consistency amongst all of our layers. And also I had already copied it, so all I had to do is just paste it into here. And then we also have to add the text, right? So I'm going to go back into this layer here, and I'm going to copy these 2 text layers. Copy. And I'm going to go back into my mass composition, my heavy and light ball, and I'm going to paste those here. And I think that it's okay if the balls kind of overlap the text a little bit here. Just make sure that the text is underneath the ball layers so that the text doesn't cover up the actual balls that are bouncing. In fact, let's change what this says. So this is mass. So I'm gonna, or you can type weight. That'll work. And we don't even need this line here, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to double click on this layer so it centers it, and then go to my Align tab and align this. And I think that's okay. In fact, I want to drop the word weight down a little bit. And it's a little too close to the 2 balls, right? I think that it's just there's too tight of a space right here. We need to give it a little bit of breathing room, and so I'm just going to drop the size of the text down to 225, and I think that'll be a small enough bump that it'll be okay. It'll give it enough room. I'm going to double click on the anchor point tool again to center that anchor point on the word, and then I'm just going to align it back to my composition here. And I might even just take the position, because we're only animated in the Y position and not the X position, so I can actually just kind of tap these over just a little bit slightly to give that even more room on the side. So I'm just going to kind of line it up with my title action safe there, and that way I could even drop the position of this. It can be centered. I'm probably going to keep it closer to where the rest of the text is. Did I spell weight right? I feel like it looks weird. W-E-I-G-H-T. Yes, correct. It looks weird to me just because it's all capital letters. And so now we have, it's going to switch. Boom. There we go. That looks cool. Continue bouncing. That's done bouncing. And then right here, we're going to do another opacity transition, but let's do our comp for the squash first. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to put squash, S&S for squash and stretch, underscore, and then we're going to do path. It's going to be path animation versus transform properties. I'll just put path versus transform. And I'm going to just copy and paste this stuff into here, right? The floor. In fact, let's copy all of this into here, making sure that my playhead's at the beginning. Control C, Control V. And I'm just going to select these two layers, and I'm going to hit U, and we're actually going to delete these keyframes. And just, because we're going to be starting from the beginning here, I'm going to turn off my alpha layer so I can see what's going on here. And then I'm just going to type squash and, oh, I didn't mean to hit caps lock. Turn that off. Turn off my caps locks. And I'm going to center that. You guys can write squash and stretch. You can just write squash if you want to. Either way, doesn't matter. I'm just going to lock these layers, save this. And now we're going to animate a bounce, right? In fact, I'm going to delete this ball here, and we're going to do all the work on this ball as far as the bouncing goes. And then we're going to update the path and stuff of this in a second. The thing is, with this ball in particular, you unfortunately can't use a pre-comp when you do the path animation one. You have to use an actual ball. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this layer here, and I'm going to copy these two layers in my pre-comp. And the only thing it's not going to have is this highlight, which is okay. And I'm going to delete this main ball right here, and I'm going to paste in the original ball this way. Let's see if we can get it to work. I'm going to bring the shadow on the top of the ball, and then we need to update the set mat, which I think is, let me go back into this. Did I have anything on here? It's on the shadow layer. So let's select the shadow layer. Take mat from layer ball. So you just have to update that right there. And then we want to make sure that this shadow goes wherever the actual ball goes, right? Because when I move this ball, if I just select the ball and hit P and I start to move it, the shadow is going to be left behind. And we don't want that to happen. We want the shadow to go with it. And so again, we have to link this layer to the ball layer here using parenting. And so I'm just going to go over here to my parent link. We're going to talk a lot more about parenting later, but this is very basic, like just kind of linking layers from one to the other. And so now when I change this, the shadow is going to go with it, right? And so I'm going to move this ball over here. And with this bounce, we want the bounce to not change. We don't want it to change in height. We're not showing mass here. We're showing squashing and stretching. So we want this to be kind of that infinite bounce that occurs. And so I am going to select the ball. I'm going to separate the dimensions. And we're going to start with our Y position up at the top. We're going to move about 12 frames ahead. We're going to drop this down here. Before we do that, we want to update the anchor point, especially on this one, because the squashing and stretching has to come from the bottom of the ball, right? So I'm going to hit Y on my keyboard, and I'm just going to drag this down here to the bottom of the ball. And then I'm just going to test this out by grabbing the scale and unlinking this, and then just kind of changing the scale there. Looks good to me. And so I'm going to keyframe the Y position. I'm going to leave that scale unlinked because we're going to use that later. I'm going to hit U on my keyboard, move 12 frames ahead, drop this down to 878 because that's where we were before, maybe a little bit higher there. Oh, that's fine. And then instead of having to do extra work, I'm just going to take this initial keyframe where the ball's up there, and then I'm going to move 12 frames ahead from the where the ball is on the ground. I'm going to copy and paste that back in the air. So it's going to go boom up, right? And we're going to have this infinite bounce happening. But before we do that, we are going to want to select these, and we're going to want to adjust the easing on this, right? So again, let's make this a bounce. We're going to, this is the floor keyframe right here. So we need to bounce off that floor. So let's just drag that there. Drag this up here. Oh, maybe not so high. Right there. So they're about equal. I'm going to grab this one right there. And just holding shift, dragging that out this way. Same with this one. Holding shift, dragging this way. So the curve looks about the same on both sides. And then, boom, that's going to hit and go back up. Perfect. Now we want to duplicate this bounce a few times, right? So I'm just going to, undo that. I'm going to grab these 3 keyframes. I'm going to hit Control C, and then making sure that I am on this last keyframe, that my playhead is right here on this last keyframe. I'm just going to hit Control V. Come on. Are you going to do it for me? Control C, Control V. Nope. You do not want to do that. Should work. Control C, copy, Control V, paste. Okay, I don't know why it didn't work before. Let's try this again. Copy, move my playhead to the very last keyframe, Control V to paste. It's just not wanting me to do it there. So let's just do this, Control copy, Control paste. And then I'm going to just drag this one right over top of that. You want to make sure that if you're doing that, that you're nice and zoomed in all the way so that you make sure you land right on top of there. And so then the ball's going to have the same height. Every other keyframe, it's going to have the exact same value, right? So the next one, I'm just going to, instead of copying all 3, I'm just going to copy the last 2, Control C. I'm going to move ahead 12 frames, Control V. Right, so back up. I'm going to do this again, Control V. Do it again, Control V. So I'm copying and pasting the last 2 instead of all 3. Seems to work for me better that way. 5 seconds is going to be fine. Just let it bounce at least 3 or 4 times. 3, 4, we got 5 bounces within 5 seconds. That's fine. So I'm just going to hit N here, trim my comp to the work area. And let's go ahead and start adding the squash and stretch like we would normally do, right? So when the ball hits the ground here, we want to, first let's bring up the scale. Holding shift, let's hit S. And we want the ball to be squashed down. So we're going to drop down this value here, probably like, let's do 75. And then remember, whatever we take away from one, we have to add to the other, so 125. And let's keyframe that scale. And then we want to move a few frames backwards. 1, 2, maybe 2 frames backwards. And we're going to add the stretch in here. So I'm going to flip these values, 75 and 125. And then probably 1, 2, 3, once it's back here, right before it's back to its final resting, I'm going to change this value back to making sure it's still linked 100, 100, right? So it's going to start to stretch down, it's going to hit the ground, and it's going to squash there. I might even just move this over a couple frames. So it's going to squashing a little bit too early, so I might just have to, we're going to have to adjust the timing a little bit. And then we want to do opposite of this, right? So let's see how many frames this is. 1, 2 frames. Cool. So I'm going to move 1, 2. I'm going to copy and paste this frame from this side to the other. We're mirroring it, right? From one side of the bounce to the other. And then this one, I'm going to copy. And I think this is only a few frames away from the first one. So 1, 2, yep, just 2. So I'm going to bring my playhead over here to this where the bounce is back up in the air. And I'm going to move backwards 2, right? 1, 2, so that I can have this keyframe the same distance away from this one. And I'm going to paste. Oh, I had this selected. That's why I did that. I'm just going to copy, select that, Control C, Control V. And let's grab these, and we're going to hit F9 on our keyboard, and we're going to go back in here. And let's drag these values out a little bit so that we can adjust the easing on this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on my graph here so I can see. And I'm going to grab these two center keyframes where the ball is on the ground, and I'm going to drag these two out a little bit, holding down Shift. Same with the bottom one, so it does the same thing, holding down Shift. And then same with these ones. So the top and the bottom, I'm going to grab this one, drag this out, maybe to till the Bezier handle is right at that 6 frame. I'm going to do the same at the bottom. Whatever I do in the top, I want to do at the bottom, and vice versa. I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to drag this out right there. I'm going to do the same at the bottom here, holding Shift, and then I'm going to grab this end one and drag this one in, holding down Shift. I'm going to do the same with this side, holding down Shift. Try and line those up as best as you can. And then we're going to do the same here. Holding down Shift. Grab this Bezier handle and hold down Shift. There we go. So now, squash, right? And now we're going to repeat that squash. So I'm going to do this, we're going to do it manually, but we're going to make sure that we select all of these bounce or the squash and stretch keyframes. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to line my playhead up to when the ball, every time the ball is in the air, at the beginning of the next bounce, right? So I'm going to line that up, my playhead up to this keyframe, and then I'm going to hit Control and arrow over twice, because then when I copy and paste these, Control C, Control V, it's going to copy and paste them in the exact same spot within this bounce here. It's the exact same thing as you would see right here. Oh, minus this one. Right? So let's just adjust this right there, right? So this is all one bounce. This is all the second bounce, and they overlap. Each one of them overlap on this keyframe right there. And so then I'm going to put my playhead on this next one, Control arrow over twice, and then paste. Do the same thing, Control arrow over twice, paste. And so on and so forth. Arrow over twice, paste. So now I've got this beautiful squash and stretch happening on this ball. And it's seamless. It's a seamless loop, right? We want to add that motion blur on to there to help to sell that speed, which looks really cool because then when it hits the ground, it gives a little bit of that distortion there with the dissolve. And now we want to do the same, but we want to change the actual path properties of the ball. So we're going to take this ball in this shadow, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to move our playhead to the beginning, and we're going to paste. So we're duplicating this ball. And the first thing we want to do is adjust the shadow on here. I'm going to adjust the layer color first so we can tell the difference. I'm going to change that to blue. And then I want to make sure that the shadow 2 is linked to the ball 2. So I'm just going to come over here and make sure that they're linked up appropriately. In fact, I'm going to rename this ball to ball_path because we're going to animate the path. So I'm going to do this shadow 2, shadow. I'm going to name this ball shadow path so that I know these two have to be together. That's why I keep them grouped by layer color. I also keep them grouped as much as I can by name. So I'm going to say ball shadow transform because this is with transform properties, right? The first one we did. And then this one is going to be ball underscore transform. Right there. And I'm going to check on here to just make sure that the set mat on this first one is still linked to this ball transform. And then the ball shadow path, I want to make sure is connected to the ball path, right? So that now it's linked in there. And then I'm going to grab the actual ball and hit P, and I'm just going to move the X position over. So we already have a bouncing that's happening. In fact, let me select this other one and kind of see whereabouts it is there so that I can kind of line them up appropriately. I think this is over just a hair over this way. There we go. And then the first thing I want to do is I want to remove this squashing and stretching that I have on this second ball over here. And so I'm going to hit S on the keyboard, and I'm just going to bring my playhead all the way to the beginning and shut off that scale. And then I'm going to lock that again so I don't have to actually mess around with that. And we want to hit U on the keyboard, or, well, the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to edit the actual path of this ball. So the path of the ball is, if you want to find it manually, you'll just unfurl the options here, go down into contents under ellipse. You're going to go to ellipse path. And right now it is still like an actual object that doesn't allow you to edit the path. In order to edit the path, you have to come down to the ellipse path here. You have to right click and you have to convert to a Bezier path. And so now what this does is this allows me to come up here and grab these little sections and move them and adjust them, right? And what's cool about that is this is keyframeable. So I can literally come in here and make changes to this, and those changes will, be consistent. Oop, I didn't want to do that. It will be consistent, when I change one of these little vertices on the path, it will keyframe that, right? I'm going to go back here. I want it to be back into its original form. And I'm going to essentially do what we did when we created the hand-drawn animated ball. We are going to create the squash and stretch with the path option here. So I'm going to hit my keyframe on there, and then I'm going to select my layer and hit U so that I can bring this up and see where it's at. And I'm going to move, let's go a few layers in. We're going to do similar to what we did with the transform property. But I just want to make sure that I have this original keyframe of the ball in its original shape so that I can, I don't have to come back and try and make it a perfect circle. And so then I'm going to move to where the ball is hitting the ground, and I'm going to set another keyframe just by hitting this little keyframe button right here. I'm going to set another keyframe, and I'm going to start to change the shape of this ball. Now, when you guys go to change the path shape and you want to select a vertice, don't try and click on it like this. Click and drag, right, to grab this one here. Now, remember that whatever we change one way, I'm just holding down shift and dragging this way. We have to make the changes to the ball on the opposite side so it keeps its volume, right? So I'm going to, in fact, let me see here. I dragged it about halfway down. And so in order to keep that kind of idea of the volume, right, instead of moving halfway this way, I'm going to move a quarter of the way this way, and then take this vertice and move it a quarter of the way this way, right? And so I'm going to, making sure not to change where my playhead is at because I'm still making changes to this frame. I wanted to, let's bring this out. Probably right there. I just held shift. I'm going to hold shift again and bring that out about this way. And then I'm going to adjust maybe I'm going to bring these down. I'm going to hold shift and select both of these frames and then maybe bring it down like this, right? Because maybe it's going to make an opposite shape. I'm going to hold down shift. And maybe I want to adjust the Bezier handles themselves. So maybe I want it to just kind of flatten out on here. If you want to adjust one side and not the other, you just hit Alt and then you click and drag. I'm sorry, let's see here. Oh, I didn't mean to turn on that mode. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything right now too. Let's see, which one are you? Are you gonna let me do it? Let's see here. Click, hold down. There's a specific order, and I hate doing this. I usually think it's usually either Alt or Shift, or I'm sorry, Alt or Control. Usually it's Control. That's okay. I'm just gonna go like this. I'm gonna bring this down. And just kind of emulate that on this side, right? So maybe like this. Or bring this down. We got the blob. Okay, cool. And then I want to create the stretch back up here. And so I'm going to move a couple frames ahead or backwards, right? So 1, 2. In fact, we can use these frames here on this other one to get an idea of what we need. And instead of just trying to shape it from where it's at right now, I'm actually going to copy this initial keyframe, Control C, Control V here, so that I can change it from the original shape to a stretch shape, right? And so I'm going to just take the sides in now. In fact, yeah, let's do the sides first. Let's go in, holding Shift about that much. Let's do the same on this side. Holding down Shift. And then I want to bring this one up a little bit. Maybe bring this one down a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to change the shape right here. I'm just going to update the shape of these Bezier curves. So it kind of looks like a pear-shaped. Squashing. And then now here's the difference. You don't want to copy. You can copy and paste this one here, right? But you need to flip this around. So this pear shape needs the fat part needs to be up at the top and the vice versa. So I'm just going to grab this end. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to drag these out. Oh, come on, buddy. Sometimes Shift doesn't work. It just depends. Sometimes path animations can be a little bit more finicky. I'm going to grab this one and just kind of drag this in a little bit more. See, I'm getting some errors. Path animations are a little bit easier inside of, you know, they're actually much easier inside of Adobe Animate. But I'm just showing you, this is the point of this one is to show that you can do the same thing inside of Adobe After Effects. And then I'm just going to make this opposite. In fact, let's move these down a little bit more, holding down Shift. Let's bring this in a little bit more because it looks a little too dramatic here. And then maybe pull this out a little bit more. Right there. They're about the same. This one I think needs to go up a little bit more. I'm just going to use my arrow key and push that one up. And then take this one and maybe push this one out a little bit. Right there. All right, that's not bad. And then I want to move back over here and copy this keyframe. Control C, Control V. And then we're actually going to move it so backwards 2 frames. Right there. Right. So, all right, cool. And with path animations, you can ease them, but you can't adjust them. I don't believe on the graph editor. Maybe you can, I guess. I didn't think you could. You just can't do it on the value graph. You can only do it on the speed graph. And when you have your speed graph, it's a little bit more touchy, right? So the speed graph is gonna look like, we're gonna want this side to come here, right? Because it's gonna squash up, it's gonna be real fast, and then It's going to make that change really quickly right about here to the peak. And then right here, it's going to still be kind of a fast change, but it's just going to be a little bit slower than the first section of it. And then same here. So I'm going to just kind of do opposite of each one of these to kind of make it, and trying to get them about the same. Not this one. Going right here. I think this will work. Yeah, not bad. If you guys don't ease these, it's not a big deal. I don't think, because we're manually doing it, so I think it actually kind of might look a little bit better. Let's try it both ways. First, let's copy these keyframes. Control C. We're going to move ahead 2. We're going to paste. And let's continue doing that down the line, and then we'll see what it looks like eased and not eased, right? Linear versus eased keyframes. I'm going to move this way, do that. Okay, so if I play this now, not bad. Let's select if you select the path, like, section of the layer down here, it'll select all these keyframes. And then I'm just going to hit Control and click on this to change them back to linear. Let's see what that looks like. Not bad. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it and see it again. I think that I like it more, actually, let's paste that and just remove those. I think I like it actually a little bit more linear, just because I'm able to see like the squashing section a little bit more. You guys can try both and see which looks better and make an appropriate judgment based off of that. But with the path animation, you don't necessarily have to, because we're making those changes manually, right? We're making the changes to the shape as far as like making it look faster. The way we make the shape elongated and add that squash and stretch. And so now I'm going to save my project. And I'm going to go into, let's fit this into the screen so we can see it. And under my main render, I'm going to go back into my project. We're going to grab this composition and drag it down underneath everything. I'm going to change the color to yellow so I can see it, and then move all the way over here, and then just kind of drag this around back towards the end. And then let's see where boom, boom, boom comes to a stop right about, let's see, right about there. So I'm going to, our opacity is already opened up. I'm just going to hit keyframe to keyframe the opacity there. I'm going to move 4 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, and change this back down to 0 on the opacity. I am going to click and drag this layer right here, our new comp, to where they line up. And I'm going to hit T for opacity on here. And I'm going to keyframe starting at 0. And then moving over, same amount, 4 keyframes, and changes to 100. So that one's fading off while one's fading on. There we go. I'm going to save this all. I'm going to zoom out of my timeline here so I can see everything. And then I'm going to just trim the end of this pre-comp here so it's not so long. Just selecting the layer and hitting Alt close bracket right there, and I'll just trim that at the end. And so now, boom, let me fit this in our screen. If we play the entire thing, nice. Cool. A little bit different here. Instead of having to use the hammers, right, we get to use the projectile ball. We have the weight happening there. It's a light bounce. Cool. And after those 5 bounces there, we can hit N on our keyboard to bring this. Let's in fact bring this to 20. Let me see, as long as I get 4 bounces in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's complete that one. So it ends right there. At 2012, I'm going to just drag the end of my composition over here, and I'm going to right click and trim comp to work area. And then now we want to export it out, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring this to the beginning. I'm going to go to composition, add to media encoder queue. And media encoder is opening up. Do any of you guys have any questions right now? Well, I am rendering. Getting ready to render. Are you guys happy that we went over this a little bit more so that you can understand it a little bit better? YouTube settings fine. On 1080, let's pick a spot where we're going to render it out to. In fact, this is not the right one. Let's remove that one. Yes, I want to remove it. Main render, perfect. That's the one I want to do. Let's pick a spot for it. Motion design principles, under renders. Let's rename this Makara underscore motion design principles underscore After Effects, right? So that I know it's mine, I know which one that is, and then I'm going to hit start here and it will render that all out. Before I do this, so let's actually stop this render, and you want to make sure that you guys put motion blur on all of your these, right? So put the motion blur on that, and then we just have to open this up and make sure that we turn on the motion blur on all of these as well. So I'm just going to double click, turn the motion blur on. I'm just going to put it on every layer, even though they're not all going to need it. It's just easier for me to just be like, I've got it all. So no matter what, they all have it, right? And so now, there we go. Everything has a little bit of blur to it. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to add that to my render queue. In fact, I'm just going to remove this. Yes. Leaving this open. Composition, add to media encoder queue. Come back here. Change the name again. Oh, make sure that I put it in the correct spot. I want to change it to that. I'm going to hit save. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. I'm going to say yes. I want to replace it because I didn't add the blur on the first time, so I wanted to make sure I did that. And I think we're in a good spot to start going through the typography projects, the rest of them. Cool. Now, if I go to this folder and I double click on here, and we're like, oh yeah, let's play it through there. And now I play, I have the actual animation happening. Here is my video rendered out. Boom. Very slow. Cool. Nice. All right, you guys, and so that is the motion design project inside of After Effects. The next one that we're going to do is going to be based inside of Cinema 4D, so just keep that in mind. That the ideas are going to be the same. We're just going to be doing this inside of a different program. So let's open up the typography project because I think I have all of your guys' stuff saved there. Let me turn my camera back on. Hello. And then I want to go to the appropriate module to grade these. Typography and motion design. Perfect. I think Logan, yours is up next. Logan. Okay, hold on. Let me delete this, and any of the submissions done here through the 27th are the ones that I want. What's that, those? Dang. Okay. That is okay here. Logan. I think I already did Ian's. I already gave Ian his grade. So this one's okay. We don't need this one still. All right, Logan, let's look at yours. Play. Nice. Good job on that. Let's watch that zoom off screen. Yeah, that looks good. This all looks really good, Logan. Ooh, cool. Messing around with some different like ice textures here, huh? All right, cool. Well, good job getting all 5 of them on screen. I think this looks really nice. I think that let me see here. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can see a little bit better. Let me close these down because I don't need these open. There we go. As far as the good, better, best scene, I think this looks really nice. The hierarchy looks really good there. I think the one thing that you could use is your motion blur because your motion blur is not on. And then the other thing is that looks good. You can maybe tap over the word good a little bit more, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Nice. The easing looks good on there. Yeah, just add the motion blur and I think you should be all set with that one. The fade one looks really nice. The one thing I can say is that overall your timing on everything is really, really good. I even like that you move the E over a little bit more. I think that looks cool. Into that. Nice. Let's see. I don't think nothing overlapped each other, which is really good. You might want to, let's turn this title action sequence on. Let's move this all over to like this line right here so that from the other one to this one right here, because this line is more, this one right here, this like box right over here is more for that 4:3 aspect ratio, and that's more for the old televisions. And so if you just move it over to like this line or this line when you're looking on, I think it'll look a little bit better and it'll be a little less room over here because right now when I look at it, my eyes want to either center it or move it over this way more, and I think over this way would be the better choice. And then overall on everything, just motion blur needs to be added on it. Motion blur is like the last thing you think of, so it's, This one's really cool. I would just lower the intensity of whatever light is creating this big highlight right here so that it's not so blown out and bright. And again, you just do that by opening up selecting the light in your thing and just going to the intensity and dropping it down. You could also change the reflectance of the material that's on your background. And if you need to know how to do that, just let me know and I'll help you do that. But that will allow for it to not reflect the light so much. You can also lowering the intensity of the light and maybe just changing the light can actually be cooler if you want it to be more of a blue light in there because everything's very cool looking. It all looks really cold, which is cool. But as far as the actual camera motion goes, let's play this. Yeah, that looks really cool. I wouldn't even go this far. I wouldn't go so far as to show this blue area right up here. I think the camera rotation, I think I would stop it maybe more. So all you would have to do is really just shorten the keyframe up and stop the camera rotation right about there. So it's a very subtle rotation. It's nothing too chaotic. But I think this is a really good start. And then for this one, I think that we could get a little bit more creative with this one because it's very similar to the other. You have it just coming in from one side to the other. And then also just the alignment there. So you could still do this, maybe just adding alternate, some kind of alternate objects on here if you want to. Maybe something's happening in the background. Um, or maybe these come in at different letters, or you're combining something different. So maybe not just, maybe you're like stacking your transform properties. So instead of just position, maybe you're adding position and scale together, right? And I think that would be something that's kind of cool. So just thinking a little bit further, I know it's been a couple weeks since this one started. So now that you know a little bit more, I think that this would be a cool thing to experiment a little bit more on. But overall, really, really good job. All right, let me see here. Who else is still in the chat right now? I'll make sure that I get your guys's done first. Is my stream still up? Looks like everything's okay. Sometimes I'm concerned if I don't hear anything. It says I'm still streaming. I'm in the chat just doing other classwork. Sweet, that's perfect. Cool. All right. Next, Jose's in the chat. I'm going to delete this one. Jose's. Ooh, something neat. Let's go ahead and play this. The first thing I noticed, Jose, is I think that everything's got like a black bar around it. Okay, I see what's going on. So Jose, are you in the chat? Still here. YouTube for some reason signed me out. Dude, it did that to me too. I literally was like, it must have been like something happening on YouTube's end, because I went to go like see how many people were in watching the video, and then it was like, you've been signed out, and I was like, what the hell? And so I was like having to look and make sure that I was still like actually streaming, because I was like, please, for the love of God, do not have my stream have cut out at like the first 15 minutes, because I would have lost my mind. Okay, cool. Well, with this one, the first thing I would do is obviously you want to make sure that all of these are in their own singular like section. So you don't want them all. I appreciate what you've done here, but because we want to make sure, and we're going to use this for our reel later, we want to make sure that these are like all in their own separate, like in like compositions that are set up like this, where it's like filling out the actual screen and not like quadrants. So I appreciate the creativity behind it, but we do want to put them in their own quadrants. So all you got to do is just, take those pre-comps and make sure they're fully sized, and then alternate the compositions like they are done down here like this, right? So like here's my first good, better, best comp, here's my fade comp, and then here's my contact information. And yours would have two more. Yours would have your creative contact information, and then like your actual 3D one here too. So, but let's go ahead and look at these. Let me zoom into each one separate so that I can kind of focus on each one. Let's see here. Let's look at this one first. All right, play. Cool, contact info. Trying something different here. Ah, cool. I think that what you could do with this one, the overshooting here actually looks kind of cool. I'm into it. You could, instead of having them rotating the single word, did you just use the rotation property for that? Let's see if there's like an alternate option under effects and presets, animation, text, animate in, fade up lines, fade up words, random flying, random shuffle. I don't think there's a rotation one. I would just offset the I would start, because I notice what you do, you like mix the opacity with the rotation, which is really cool. I would offset those keyframes so that the rotation happens first. And right when the rotation is like about at, let's see here. Oh, I keep wanting to play it down here, but it's up here. When the rotation is kind of like right about there is when I would start to animate the opacity in. And so the opacity can come in, like the end keyframe can end on the same spot on the timeline that your rotation ends at. But like I would start the rotation first, like come in a few keyframes until it's almost like flat like this, and then start your opacity animation. So 0% opacity, and then when the rotation ends, that's when I would do the 100% opacity as well. And I think that offset in it will look really cool, so that right here we're not seeing it kind of upside down, because that kind of tricks your mind a little bit more. And then this thing, right, you can offset the actual layers of this as well. So take your layers and just kind of move them a couple frames off to the side. So maybe this one animates in first and then this one comes on. And then same with the text that you have over in this area when this comes on. Like maybe this one can come on first, and then this one's a couple frames after, and then a couple frames after this comes on, this one comes on, and then this one comes on. Does that make sense? So you're like offsetting them just a little bit, so like they're not all starting at the same time and ending at the same time, and I think that would add a little bit more visual interest there. But good start on that one. That one's really cool. You are missing the one that's supposed to be like the stuff in class, I think. So that's the only other one you're going to want to add on to here. Let's look at your good, better, best. But I also haven't gotten all the way to the end, so it may be there. All right, good start on that. So we're obviously having some issues with this one up at the top here, because it's like constantly moving. So you're going to want to make sure that there's like a section in between when they come to a stop and right when they're about to start moving off screen, right? That there's no value change in between those two keyframes. So when I'm watching this one, let's move this back here. This one's value, let's open this to show you. So, yeah, I'm zoomed out all the way. So instead of good, here's my word good, right up at the top, right? And so this first keyframe is a keyframe where it's off screen. And this second keyframe is the one where it settles on screen right here, right? So it's going to zoom in on screen. And then you want to make sure that the second and third keyframe, like the keyframe from here to the one, let me move here. Actually, let me do this. There you go. Cool. So you want to make sure that this keyframe and this keyframe right here are the same exact value. So when you're looking at this and your playhead is over top of this keyframe, you want to make sure that that says whatever this one is, and then when you move over here, that this one is the same exact value, and they do not change. And that'll get rid of like that slow moving that's happening there, like that constant move. And you want to make sure that you have everything blocked out before you go easing it. So if you did the start and then you eased this animation first, and then you went on to do the end here, if you've got these keyframes in the beginning, with easing on them, it will mess up the keyframes over here. It'll cause, or well, what'll happen is the second keyframe and this third keyframe will still have changes. Even if the values are exactly the same, the changes will still happen there. And it has to do with the path of the animation, kind of like overlaps itself and loops around itself really funny. So if that becomes an issue, like your values are the same, but that's the issue, select all of your keyframes, hit Control and click on them to turn them all to linear, and then you're going to want to delete this keyframe over here. You're going to want to move your playhead back over and then copy, Control C, Control V, copy and paste that keyframe, and then select them all and go easing them. Because if you don't do it that way, if you did like the first section, eased it, then did the second part, and then eased that, it becomes an issue. So you have to make sure that just all of the animation is blacked out before you do any of that stuff. But other than that, the only other thing I would do is this one, same thing. So it looks like that might have been the issue for you, is that you maybe did the first section, ease that out before you blacked out the rest of it. You want to make sure that you're blocking out the entire animation and getting all that stuff done before you start to change like the graph editor, because you'll run into issues and you're like, oh, I need to redo something. Let's go back here. Because, oh, sorry, I keep grabbing onto that. I'm going to close that out. Just look right here. Make this smaller. There we go. And then you just need to add the blurring on pretty much all of them. I would just make sure that you have the motion blur on there. And then make sure this one is not italics, right? It can still be, like if this one's bold or black, make this one like the regular font or whatever. And then this one a thin font. Or you could do, what you could do instead is have this one like it is. Have this one being in this font style, and then have the word good be like the first letter G is capitalized, but then the rest of it's lowercase, right? And so that can also show hierarchy there. Good start though on that one. And then as far as this one goes, what I noticed right away, let's play it first. So the easing just has to be adjusted on that. And then what I would, let's play the rest of it. Let's watch this in slow. So let me turn my thing on and then change the color here to yellow. I think yellow will work. Perfect. Yeah, that's good. So the first thing that I would do is I would move the letter F over to the side a little bit more so that it's kind of getting cut off like maybe right about here and not butted up directly on where the edge of the F is. The other thing that I would do is I would tighten up the space between the A, the D, and the E here, and then also not run this on the side like that. If you want to do this, you can just move this over a little bit more so that the E is getting cut off like maybe right about like right there, like maybe the center of the letter or something. But then if you push these letters over this way a little bit more, it's going to give you a little more room for this to happen right there, because when I play this, if I escape out of this and play this, it's too tight. There's too much room in between this area and this area right here. You want to have a little bit of breathing space for these. The other thing that I notice right off the bat is that the easing, you might need to adjust the easing for this, but the type for the sentences should line up to the top and the bottom of the letters here. So this one's okay, but this one here, you're going to need to move up a little bit more, right? So that it's along this kind of invisible line that's right here. And the other thing is that you have typography can be faded per letter is appropriate on this one, but you need to make sure that you change this one to, let me get out of all this here. There we go. This one here needs to be, can be faded on per word, because this one's the same animation as this one right now. So you need to just make sure you update that. But it is a good start. You have it blocked out with that. And then for this one, we are missing the other contact information that emulates the one that I did. So you want to just make sure that you do that again. No, that's a really good, I like that. Really nice and steady animation there. Like the camera's really nice and smooth. I would just add maybe another light and push in a little bit more, because right now I'm just seeing all of this black empty space up at the top, which I can tell is like where the top of the backdrop is. So extend the top of the backdrop. You can do that instead of zooming in. That's what I would do, is I would just go into my backdrop object. I'm so sorry. Extend the height of that. And so that'll kind of get rid of this issue. And then I would also add a camera to this side right here so that it fills it in a little bit more and brings a little bit more, I meant to say a light, not a camera. Add a light over in that corner so that it fills in that space a little bit more. And you can increase the size. I would just watch at kind of maybe the most recent one that I did in class, where I expand out the kind of area of the light that you're able to cover. And that way you can maybe drop the intensity down, but having that extra light over on the side will fill in kind of a lot of these hard shadows that you have going on. And then this light that you do put over here, kind of up and back behind the camera is where you want that light. Is you're going to want to make sure that the intensity is dropped down so that it's not as intense as your key light. It's just there to fill in any kind of shadows that you don't want to be there. If you need a little bit more help on that, you can ask me later, or you can just jump back into that lesson and rewatch that section. But overall, a very good start here. Let me see here. We're just missing the one. Other than that, let's see what your... Nice, 24 FPS. We've only got a couple here that are not in 24 frames a second. Let's see. All right. Huh. What did I do there? Did not mean to do that. I'm just going to put a quick comment on your thing here. Is there anyone else in the chat right now who's watching who wants to get theirs graded? Let me delete both of your guys's so that I don't accidentally redo them again. All right. Isaac. Nimitz. Okay, cool. Let's get to that one. Let's do that one first. Sweet. Oh, you so nervous. Alex, you'll be fine. You'll do okay. Let me find you over here. There we go. Cool. Good job right away. 24 frames a second. Awesome. Got it on there. Sweet. Let's go ahead and hit play. Let me zoom out here. There we go. Ooh, color palette. I'm into it. Kind of like an ombre looking. Cool. Yeah, you did the same thing that I was talking about doing. That looks nice. Ooh, yeah. Good job. Good color palette here. I noticed, Alex, that you definitely like to use the color palettes. Really do a good job at picking out. That's cool. Ooh, look at that. Root of Alex. Dang, dude, you put in some work on that. That's very creative. Really good job so far. Let's break it down. Okay, so first one, zoom in here. a little bit, just a little bit. It wants to do that. Let's just go to fit. Cool. And so when I play this, there's a little bit of overshoot happening. Let me change this back to red. There's a little bit of overshoot just happening on the word best. And if you watch, it's very, very subtle, right? So if I play this, it kind of very subtly just kind of shoots back in. So you just want to check that curve to make sure the curve doesn't go over that resting keyframe. And that's a very easy, quick fix. The other thing that I would do here is I would maybe just separate a little bit of room in between these, just a tiny bit more. So just maybe bring them up, but you're only animating the X value here. So you should be able to, as long as you separated your dimensions, you should be able to just move them up slightly. I think that would just add a little bit of breathing room in between these, because the only reason I say that is because of where the G is. This section of the G is like when I play this. Yeah, that looks really cool. Typography can be, these are appropriately animated. The only thing that I would do here, and this is like a common issue that I see in this project a lot. So don't, you guys, everyone who's done this, don't feel bad. Just bring this up a little bit more so that it touches there. And then this down a little bit more as well, so that it's like resting on these invisible lines. The letter P can go under this line. That's okay. That's not a big deal. And then the other thing I would do is maybe change your leading of this here. So the leading again is over in, if I go to GCC one, is in your properties panel. So if I were to click, let's double click this and see. If I were to click the word best here and come over to here, this is your leading, right? So sometimes that rule that I tell you of the 20 points is a great rule to follow. But if it looks like there's a little bit of extra space here, you can, bend that rule a little bit and make it a little shorter here. And the reason I'm saying that is because this looks like all one singular paragraph, because the amount of space between the lines here is the same amount of space that you have here between these two sentences, which we want to kind of separate a little bit. And so that's the reason I'm saying to do that. And then just the motion blur, and I think you'll be set on there. But that's a really good one here. I like the color on it. And then we have, cool. Sweet. Not bad. The only thing I'm going to say, your information, not my information. Just update that, and then you'll be fine. It doesn't even have to be, and then the motion blur. You're going to want to add the motion blur on there too. Sweet. That looks cool. This one's great. This is neat. You did really cool job picking the use complementary colors. You have a very strong sense of color palette, is what I was meaning to say earlier, and it just shows in your work here. I would maybe on this, as far as the animation goes, the animation looks really nice, very smooth rotation here. You might not even have to go as far if you don't want to, but that's not that big of a deal. I would just take this main light that you have here and extend the area that it does, so it fills in that hard shadow that we have in the upper left corner. You just don't want that hard shadow to be showing. We're trying to give the illusion that it's like one long continuous space that your name is in. So you might be able to get away with that by changing the area of light, right? That is from that key light that's over here, that green one. Or what you could do is add an additional fill light over here on the other side. So maybe the fill light's over here, and it's like more that, like it's half the intensity, even more than half down. Like maybe only 75% or maybe 25% intense over here. So it's just filling in those shadow areas. Remember, you can put fill lights wherever you need them to be to kind of fill in those dark areas on, like, in your projects. That's a cool thing about working within Cinema 4D, is we're our own directors, and so we have control of what the set looks like. It's not like costing us anything more, except for like time and rendering, right? That's the only thing. And then over here, let's get to this really cool. That's cool. I think that what you did is very, very creative, especially with what we know so far, right? I would say that there's ding doo doo. I think that you could take what we've learned this week and last week with the motion design project, and we could update this to, I'm not going to like obviously mark you down points on this, but I think this is really cool, and I think that it was very ambitious for you to do, and I'm excited for that, right? I but we can improve upon it. The first thing that I would do is slow down this transitional wipe of this big shape in there. So you're going to want it to ease in and out. Maybe have like more of a closer to like a standard easing and more of a traditional curve. So what do I mean by that? So I would take like if I double click this and fill this area with a block, right? Let's fill this with like this blue block. And I'm going to animate the position of this from this side to this side. Oh, wrong. Right over here. All right, like maybe I want to, holding down shift, I'm just going to drag it over here. Did yours stop halfway? It didn't. I think it went all the way over. It like transforms. That's really cool because like it gives, so that's what I mean by like a match cut, right? Is it kind of gives the illusion that that is you're thinking in more of an advanced way of motion design. So let's just move this over still over this way, a little bit more this way. And maybe we could, so let's ease this first. Let's hit F9 here. And so, boom, right? That's going over this way. Right now, 1 second would be a good timing for that. Let me shut these off here so you can see. I think the 1 second is decent timing. You can even shuffle this in a little bit more so it's a little bit faster. But if I select both of these, I'm going to go into here and it's going to want me to separate my dimensions. And we're going to do this. I'm going to click separate dimensions here. Let's shut off the Y position because we're not using that and only select the X position. And then we're going to select all of the keyframes by clicking and dragging, and we are going to ease them both, right? And so what I would do is I would just maybe holding down shift, just slightly enhance the easing of this object. And I know what you did is you didn't ease it from off screen to on screen, right? Because we talked about it not having to be that way. And that's fine. You don't have to do that. We can just come over here and change this to a linear keyframe like that. But I think if your graph is more like, if your graph looks more like this, right? A nice sloping curve, that it's going to be fast right here and then it's going to start to slow down really nice and smooth right there. And then you can just kind of exaggerate this last keyframe to give that an even smoother slowdown right there. And I think that would look really neat. The other thing you can also add to give that kind of, because you have right here, what's happening here is zooming out there and it's like becoming that square. You could, if you wanted to do the path animation, you could, if I did this here, and then if I just go up into this little search bar here with my layer selected and I type path, it'll give me the options right here, and I'll right click and convert this to a Bezier. And then I want to select on here, maybe I'm going to move it right about here where I can zoom out and see these things right here. And I'm going to want to keyframe this, and I'll adjust my keyframes in just a little bit. But maybe when it's over here, maybe this starts to kind of close in on itself a little bit more. So if I hold down shift and I start to bring this way and start to bring holding down shift this way, and if I hit U on my keyboard and I'm like, oh, I want this kind of to happen right about there, I'm offsetting like the timing of that. So it's kind of scaling down on one end at the same time while it's like moving off screen. In fact, I would maybe even just shorten the timing of this so that it kind of just starts to barely do that when it's almost off screen. There we go. And then you could have that square come in from this side like you did. So like boom, boom. The bouncing is cool. I would give a little bit more time to this overall. I think that if you add a little bit more time in here, because you've done all this work and it moves too fast, that I'm like wanting to replay it and re-see everything. And so learning to really know, like, I should give this a little bit of space to breathe for the action to actually occur within an appropriate amount of time. It takes a while to get to that point where you're like, the timing's off here. I think this needs to be adjusted. But I think overall you can extend the timing of this, right? We want to be able to see all of this hard work that you put in. And so just kind of slowing it down a hair, I think will be nice. You can, and then the bounce there is really cool because you have the scaling happening at the same time as the bounce. You could slow that bounce down and maybe even like when it hits this ground area, when it bounces, because you have a bounce and a rotation happening, maybe you could do a squashing and stretching down here, kind of like we did with the right now with the weight thing. So with the anticipation of the projectile with that one ball, and I was showing you that you do the bounce first and then you add in those X position keyframes. So watch what I did today. Kind of emulate that here, and then you can add that little rotation in at the same time. And I don't want to keep going back to there. I don't know why I do that. Let me go to zoom down here. And I think that would be really cool to do here. And you could even bounce it to, because I know that boom, like if it bounces right here and it's still its full size, you can do the path animation then right when it's at the rest. So right when that, maybe it's scaling down until it's kind of small, but then maybe you can take the top two vertexes of that square and bring them down to create kind of a line, and maybe even extend them out if you want to, doing a path animation. So it creates like a straight line that shoots across here, right? And that's when you can drop that down below here when you do that. But I think this is really cool. I think it was very ambitious, and I think you did a really good job with the information that you had there. And then, yeah, slow that little eye animation down because I think that's really cool. Very, very solid work. Very solid work so far. Great job. Feel proud of yourselves, you guys. When you put in a lot of work like that, like it shows, right? There might be a little bit more feedback, but it's impressive to see work when you put that kind of work forward with stuff like that. Is there anyone else that's in the chat that wants theirs to go over? Let me just delete this for you. Yeah, no worries, dude. Yeah, you did a great job, Alex. Did a great job. You guys all did. Really good job. Logan did a great job. Jose did a great job. Great starts on all of those. You know, we might need a little bit more work on some of them, but I went over yours, Logan. Oh, wait. Do you want to know you did a fantastic job? Because you did. Alex, were you signed in under a different name before? Because I'm noticing it says Mireille, and then now it says Nimitz. So are you in a different thing? I just want to make sure. Oh, I'm Logan Taylor. Oh, Logan Taylor. Oh, I'm sorry, dude. Yeah, Logan Bacon. Yeah, of course. Logan Taylor. I'm sorry. Logan Taylor's in the chat. Logan Bacon is who I went through. Let's see here. Thanks for like letting me. I was like, there are two Logans in here. Sweet, Musa. Let's look at this. Well, then that makes sense. I feel bad. Sorry, dude. All right, let's go here. Let's start this. All right, play. Cool. First of all, these are the Lansing Spartans, MSU, Michigan State University Spartan colors. And that already has like a great place in my heart. Yeah, same person. You just logged in with a different account. Okay, good to know. All right. Let's see there. Ooh, nice. Good job on that the easing on that. Good job on actually mixing the typefaces here. I noticed that you have a serif with the sans serif font, and it actually looks really nice because the serif font that you chose, it's like rounded out really nicely. It balances really well with that serif font. So it might be like a version of this font, but a serif version because we do have those, right? So like Roboto is a sans serif font, but there's like a Roboto serif font that you can mix and match with. So those are really cool. Ooh, dude, nice. See, this is what I'm saying, you guys. Like, really interesting stuff that I've never seen anything like that from anyone else. Ooh, that looks very high end. Cool, let's break all this down. Awesome, Logan. Really good job, first of all. The first thing that I noticed here, right? First of all, very good job on the hierarchy here. You could even increase the word best as far as like the size goes, and then decrease the word good a little bit more, maybe in size. And I think that it would show the hierarchy a little bit better. And then I would maybe cut the spacing in here by like a third, right? So I would drop this down about a third of the way and then drop this down about a third of the way. So you get a little bit of a tighter space in between there. Because the reason that they're like tight and built kind of like that is because the word best is the heaviest looking word in there. And so that's going to anchor the composition as a whole. It's going to anchor that visually down at the bottom. And so you could you could do one of two things, right? You can make the word best bigger, which would be cool, and then it would kind of fill in this space here, and then just drop this one down a little bit and maybe make this a little smaller. That's what I would do possibly there. The other thing is that right here, the text is showing, so all you got to do is in that first of all, let me delete this and then bring this up here. Like if let me go over here. All you got to do is go to this first keyframe here and then just push that value even over further until you're not seeing like the ghosting image, because when you it might initially look like it's off screen, but then as soon as you start to mess around with the easing changes the speed of the, like, even though the timing is the same, it's changing when that speed is occurring, when it's like becoming the fastest. And so it changes when that happens on screen here. So just move that first position over further to the left and I think you'll be good there. But you've got and then the other thing, let's see, let's bring up this title action safe real quick. I think you're close. Line it up to this. So just make sure you just move everything over here, and you can easily do that by selecting, right? So if I wanted to, let's say mine was over that way, I would make sure that my playhead is over, I'm going to hit you on the keyboard. My playhead is over all of these ones. And then I would just move them over one at a time, making sure the value is similar, right? So which one did I just move there? Let's select all of them. Holding shift. Oh, making sure you're only on these 3 keyframes there. And then you can move them like this, right? Or what you can do is do the cheat way that I was talking about and you can connect these to a control layer, right? So if I right click here and I put new null object, and then I select all of my text and I connect it to this control, I can literally just hit P on that and push this over here if I need to. You're just going to have to make sure you do this before you change this X value in the front there, because as soon as I move all of this over, it's going to change the start too. It could possibly like bring it further over to, like right now I can see the ghosting image of that, right? So that would mean that, let's say I wanted this all to be on this line right here, I would take this null, I'd move them all over like this. And then what I would do is I would go back this way. I would delete this null off of here because I don't need that controller anymore. And then I would just move this all, oh, I'm sorry, grabbing the word best and moving this over like that. And that way I don't have that ghosting image there. In fact, I can barely see a ghosting image right there too. So I'd probably move this one back. Probably move them all back just to be sure. And then when I play it, the animation is still there. I guess I have a similar type of spacing here, so I'm not gonna tell you to, you don't have to space them. I would just maybe make best a little bit bigger in size, right? But your spacing is fine. Don't worry about that. I realize that my very similar here, right? So that's one way that you can change the spacing on that. Not the spacing, but the position, right? Is using that control layer. That looks really good though, the way it zooms off screen. Fade looks good, right? You can maybe even extend out. So I think it happens a little quick. So I would just extend out all of your keyframes. Maybe just 4 more frames, maybe. And I think it'll slow that down a little bit and it'll look a little bit smoother. So I would just, yeah, extend that a few more frames. That's good. Make sure that these are left aligned, your letters here, and not right aligned. So you can find that. Also, if I click on there in the properties panel, and making sure that you hit the right alignment. That obviously changed that there, but if it were here, let me do this first of all. I don't need to move that. But if I went to my fade here and I brought this in and I select this, right, you just make sure that under your paragraph in your properties panel, you just select that. If you don't see that, if you come up to window here and then you can see paragraph right there. And you can just open that little tab up and it'll open one of these little separate panels for you. But I think that's the only thing that I would do here. I'm pretty sure it's pretty lined up here. You could even maybe tap this up a little bit more and this down a little bit more. This looks good. I think motion blur just on everything. I don't know. I would stick some motion blur on the word fade. And then I think this has motion blur here. Let me. Nope. Put some motion blur on all of the text here, and then also on the like adjustment layer that we used. I would maybe move the adjustment layer. One of two things. First, make your name bigger. I would make it bigger in size by like 2. And then I would rest it on this line here and just have like the G and the Y hang down below. Maybe, I guess you can try. I think if you make the text bigger, it's not going to look as there's just something that looks a little off here that makes it a little distracting. I think if you make the word bigger and it hangs up in the center of it a little bit more, it might not be as distracting looking. try it that way, and if it still looks a little distracting, I would just drop the adjustment layer down so it just kind of meets right there at the bottom of your name. That's all I would do there. And then the motion blur. That is really cool. Let me tell you what. If you add motion blur to that, that is going to look really awesome. Really fun stuff you did there. So, cool. Let me drop this back. Let me think here what you could do. If you match the scale, if you have this blurring, if you add the motion blur to these, you can change the color of these as well. So you can animate the color of an object by, let me throw an object in here, or if we just look at the letter D, right? So let's say the letter D is on here, and I drop it down, or in fact, over on my property panel, there is the option to keyframe your fill color. And so what I would do is maybe while those are spinning at the peak speed of the spin that you have going on here, right like at the same time that this circle is fading in, because you can have the circle fading in, just make sure that these are all, everything's centered in the composition. And then I would change the color of these at the same time that you have this scaling up and fading on. So color change right there of your rings, because when it's spinning with the motion blur, because it's so fast, it will, it'll just enhance like the visual effects of it. That's pretty neat. Like this, I would even make this happen maybe a couple more times. So bop, bop, bop. And you could even have, I would have, instead of your entire name, how would I do this? Boom, boom. That's cool. This is neat. Having a ton of fun. Make sure that circle that's back here is entirely off screen, and then you want to make sure that everything is centered. So just making sure that you select all of your circles that you have drawn, and then hit like if you hold shift and select all the layers, and then hit control and double click the pan behind tool or the anchor point tool, it'll center them all. And then you could also align with them all selected, align them to making sure that you align them to change that to the composition so they all align to the composition there. And I think that this, and then what you could do is if you link all of those layers together using the parenting or the linking option, you link it to the one main circle, which would probably be, let me see, which one's your main one? So flashes. Flash, let's go frame by frame on here. Scaling down. So scale this down and fade that out right away so that it's fully off screen when these show up. And then I think your main circle should be the one in the, whichever one ends up in the full center there. So this one's kind of scaling out. Pop. You could have, this is cool. So they're like repeating. There's an easier, are you using the effect radio wave? Are you using an effect here? I'm going to finish yours and then I'll stop the live stream. So if anyone wants to go, I just realized what time it was, that it's 8:35. But I want to finish with the Logans here. So if you guys want to jump off the live stream, go ahead and do so. I will talk to you guys all on Thursday. We're going to continue going through all of these on Thursday's class. possibly getting to the next project, but I definitely need to give you guys feedback on these. So going to try and get through some of these on Thursday's class. See if I can get through some of these tomorrow. Okay, so there is Night Eric. I would do, there's like a radio waves effect. Let's create a new comp real quick here. New composition. We'll just say okay. So it's black. And then there is, if I go to effects and presets, radio waves. And I have to put that on a composition. So I'm just going to create a new adjustment layer. And I think that it should work like this, right? Radio waves. And now if I play it, it's automatically got these radio waves here. And you can change the color of them if you want to do that. I think this would be easier for you. And then what you could do, right, is if you didn't want them to go so far, because what happens is these radio waves extend out and then it's like a continuous thing that happens, right? And you can change the parameters are set at birth. If we mess around with this, let's try this. Let's look at the wave motion. You can, the frequency is how fast it goes, right? So you can change, the expansion is how fast it expands. The frequency is how often. So if I increase the frequency, you're going to get a bunch more. It's going to look really trippy. So be very careful with that. It would probably go to like only a few. You can change the direction of it. I don't know how much that's not going to count here because it's a circle, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. The velocity changes. Oh, that's pretty neat. So if you just kind of mess around with this, you can get some really interesting effects. You can reflect it on things. You can choose, let's see, the stroke. If you pause, if you let this come out all the way, right? Like this, you move your playhead all the way to the end, and then you start playing with these different, you can change the width of the start there. Like if you wanted them to be consistent throughout the whole thing, change the start and the end there. So the end width and the start width are the same. I think this will be a lot better for you though. If you don't want them to fade over time, like there's like a gradient effect happening that's at the edges there, you just change that to 0 so they don't fade over like time, because what's happening is they're fading as they get further off screen. Yeah. See, that's why I'm saying like this will cut down a lot on your timing here. See, so changing the shape of the line gives you different kind of looks to the stroke and like the gradient of it. Sine wave. So if you were just like a square one where you want it just kind of blocked like that, then that's fine. And let's say you didn't want it to go past a certain size, right? Like yours has a purple circle around it. Let's create that purple circle. We're going to kind of emulate that here. And I'm going to change from a fill. I'm going to shut my fill off, hit OK. And I'm going to change it to a purple stroke like you had. And I'm just going to draw a circle holding down Shift and Control, and that'll allow me to get a bigger circle like that. And then I'm obviously going to bump up this size of this right there. And I'm just going to rename this purple circle, right? And then what you can do is you can duplicate this purple circle and drop that down, and you can right here radio, I like to do mask first in all caps so I can see right away what it is. And then I would type in radio waves. And then I would change this layer to radio waves just to keep good practice of this stuff, right? And so what you can do now is you can, basically we're going to use a track mat to kind of mask out this so it doesn't go beyond that, right? So I'm going to move that forward in time, and I'm going to drop under here, under track mat, on the radio waves layer, I'm going to select mask radio waves, that mask that we just made. And so we're going to try a couple things here, right? The first thing I want to do is I want to click on this thing and see which one we can get to make it show up. Inverted. Let's see here. So this is like inverting our mask. The other thing that we can do is we can just delete this here. This might be a little bit easier if I select on this radio waves. The other method works, but it's like a different way of masking, which we can just add the mask directly onto this radio waves layer. If we just select the layer down here, and then we come up here to our like our shape tool, and then you just want to make sure that it's under this one. I'm sorry, let's see. This one right here for mask and not the shape. And then I'm going to click and hit Shift and Alt or Control, I'm sorry, which will do it from the center, and I'm just going to bring that up like that so that now it won't play beyond this, right? And now I want to link this layer to my purple circle so that I can move my purple circle around anywhere, and this will go with it, right? So I'm just going to parent that layer there. And so now I can move this layer around. Ooh, okay, interesting. This is kind of neat. So because it's an effect and it is on an adjustment layer, I think that's the reason it's not moving along with it. So we can get away with this by pre-composing. So Control Shift C, and then radio waves pre-comp. And then I want to now, let's see if that worked. Okay, it's not going to work that way. Let's double click into here. Let's undo this. So it's just kind of working to see what works best. I'm going to, let's try this on a shape layer. So I'm going to come up here, rectangle tool. I'm going to shift double click, or I'm control double click, and it will create one the entire size. And then I'm just going to change the stroke, shut the stroke off here. Hit OK. Put the fill in. And let's see if we can add this directly to this radio waves effect. Let's Control X, and let's see if we can add it to an actual shape layer. Because I'm not sure. I've never done that. It did work. And so let me see. Now we have to add that mask, right? So I think what we can do is select this radio waves layer and hit M and take this mask that we made on this one and select it, Control C, select this one, Control V, and copy and paste it. Let's delete this. And this mask layer, invert it. Let's see if this one we might have to do a little bit differently. This one might have to be the original option. Let's put here radio. I'll just put radio waves. Come on. Let's select that and see if we can do it with the mask. Grab the mask, making sure you select the masking tool. Okay, that doesn't work. So this one will have to be, I'll duplicate this, drop this down, enter here. In fact, let's do this instead. Let's delete this. We're going to duplicate this one, type mask, And we're going to remove the radio waves off of this. So it's like an object right there, right? And then I forget this is an entire square. So this is going to have to be like a separate shape layer. I'm going to select the shape tool, making sure I actually have the shape option selected. And I'm going to hit Shift Control and I'm going to make another shape on its own separate layer. And this one I'm going to relabel to mask. We're going to see if this works, right? Because right now, the radio waves effect is being applied to the entire world, right? And so that's why it's not moving around. When I had it messed out the first time, it wasn't moving around with the object because it's applied to the world and not the object. So we're trying to get around this, right? That's why we're working in this other way and trying to figure out how to address the problem. And so what I'm going to do now is this is where I'm going to select this to here, and it worked. And so now when I move, if I take this mask and I connect the mask to the radio waves layer, and I take the radio waves layer and connect this, if I link this layer to the purple circle layer, it should, it doesn't work that way. So let me try and figure out, you could also, I guess, let me see, P here, can you, let's see if we try and pre-compose it still. And then this is connected to this. And this is connected to this. Will it work? Yeah, there we go. So that's how pre-composing like fixes things like that, right? So I just had to, so the steps that had to happen there is I created a shape layer. And that shape layer, I put the radio waves on. And then I adjusted the radio waves composition, right? I'm going to delete, I think I need to have that in there still. Let me delete this mask, see if that matters. Nope. So create the shape layer, throw the radio waves on here, adjust this however you want it to. And then you're going to create a mask that is a circle shape, right? I created a shape layer that had a fill on it. And then what I did is I came over here to the track map and I just changed this to the mask, right? I selected it to use this mask that I created, the mask shape, to essentially cut this out. And then I had to pre-compose these together in order for it to allow this purple circle to control it, right? So I had to pre-compose those two into this layer. And then I connected this pre-comp to the purple circle, and that's the way it works. So sometimes it's just a little bit of messing around in order to get to that like final look that you want. But I think if you do that and then start to animate that, I think that would look really cool. And then add some motion blur onto here. And then this looks really cool too. I just wouldn't even animate the letters as far as your 3D one goes. I would just keep the name up here, like I would center it in the middle of that tile. So I would center your name in the middle of the tile. You might have to move the camera a little bit more. And I would just slow like the camera motion down a little bit. And I think that you'll have like a really cool looking effect here. But I'm digging using the tiles in a very creative way. But yeah, I would just move your name. I would move this over so it's in the center of this tile. And then just not have the name animated on there so we can kind of just appreciate more of like the textures and stuff that you have. Other than that, you did a really good job. Really, really cool work. Let me grade that for you real quick. Do you have any questions for me, Logan, before I take off? Copy this or put this here. There we go. Yeah. So I would just, you don't have to center the tiles so much as just centering the, um, sweet, awesome. You, centering the tile, don't worry about that. What I would do is center your name in the tile, and then I would center the camera. Like you might have to adjust the camera. You can use a target camera if you want. That target camera, which you use, adjust the target a little bit more so that it's like more focused on the center. I didn't actually notice that the tile wasn't centered as much as I noticed that the name wasn't centered in the tile. That's was really the only thing. Other than that, you did like a very, very good job. And there we go. Sweet. Yeah, if you throw a camera target on there, um, a target camera, you can take the target and move the target to where you want it the camera to like focus on. It's essentially like setting the focal point, kind of like setting like it's like putting a string on your object and then pulling the camera out in the string, like the camera will follow that string, right? That's what the target is essentially for, is it's like it's almost like you put your camera on a tripod and you can constantly having it, in the same spot, but just like rotating around an object or something. Yeah, but you did a good job. Really, really good job. All right. If you don't have any more questions, then I'm going to let you go. And then we'll see you in class on Thursday. Thursday's class, I might go ahead and I'm not sure if I'm going to start the next project, or if we're going to just continue going over. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Guys, have a good night. Thanks for sticking around an extra half an hour. But Thursday's class will probably be a little bit, maybe a little more project review, and if not, we'll be starting on the next project possibly. We'll see. I might give you guys a little extra time and just do some more project reviews the next couple classes. So, other than that, have a good night. Enjoy tomorrow, and I will see you guys on Thursday.